that calculation for me. I was like, what? How do I figure that out? And the net revenue's lost. And yeah, I was like, I might need Brett's wife to kind of go through this for us and tell us what we're supposed to do to calculate this out.
Yeah, it's a pretty good read, that's for sure.
Yeah.
We are live
Not a
streaming.
nighttime read because you would definitely be asleep real quick.
I'm sure Doug's going through it and will give us a good cliff notes on it.
Yeah, and AWC should be doing that eventually too.
Hi, Kim, Gary, Marcus.
How are you?
Good.
Good evening.
We are live streaming. I'm not recording yet, but we're live streaming.
Good evening, everyone.
Hi, Marcus.
Hello.
Kelly, I'm on my mobile phone right now, but I'll be re-logging into my computer in about 5 minutes.
Okay, I'll watch for you.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
It was a good meeting today, Kim, with the Memorial guys.
Yeah, that's pretty good. You get to go to one meeting and then they just it cause the disillusionment of a whole 501c3.
Yeah.
Hey, Steve.
Hello.
Hello, everybody.
Hi, Anya. Chief. I like your background, Chief.
Yeah, I was just gonna say the same thing.
Oh. You went to the logo or the patch.
He didn't like it.
Hi, Sean.
Hello.
Brought Doug over a little early, but hi, Doug. Test your audio.
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Hello, Mr. Mayor.
Hey. Are we just missing Mary?
They also started YouTube already.
Yeah, I know. I had issues last week, so I started a little early to make sure it fired up. Yeah, I don't see Mary yet.
Yes, Dave.
Oh, there she is. She's coming.
Hello, everyone.
Hey, Russ.
Hey, Russ.
We have everybody, and it is 6 o'clock. So let's get this city council meeting started. This is going to be a regular meeting. It's of the Lake Stevens City Council. It's Tuesday, May 11th, 2021, and this meeting is a remote access only via Zoom. We are streaming it on YouTube, where it will also be recorded for future viewers if you wish. So with that, I'll call the meeting to order, and I'll ask everyone to rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America,
And to
the republic
for which
which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you, everybody. And with that, Kelly, can you give us a roll call, please?
Absolutely. Councilmember Daughtry,
I'm present. Thank you.
Councilmember Peter Shaken,
Present.
Councilmember Frederick,
Here.
Councilmember Dickinson,
present.
Councilmember Jorstad,
I'm here.
Councilmember Ewing,
Present.
Councilmember Taggett.
Present.
All right, we got everybody? Great. And so on the agenda tonight, I need a couple changes. Item H actually needs to go to the, can be a consent agenda. And as well as we have an executive session tonight before we adjourn. So with that, can I get an approval of the agenda?
I move
Okay,
to approve the agenda with the suggested changes.
Second.
And discussion. Mary, did you have something?
Yes, I didn't quite get what was added to the agenda because I did want to add something. Maybe you've already done it. So would you please repeat what that was?
Sure. So we're going to move item H, which is the on-call tree removal services.
Okay.
To the consent agenda. And then we have an executive session tonight on personnel action, if I remember correctly.
All right. So I would like us to add that the DEI and A. Pardon?
I'm sorry, everybody froze on me.
Am I here?
You're here, Mary. Go ahead.
Okay. All right. So I would like to add the DEI and A discussion tonight again to be into the agenda just as a discussion item. I feel like we left things hanging and I would like to talk about that a little more. That is my ask.
So we have a motion on the table to add the DEIA commission discussion to a discussion item. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion?
Was it my impression that the mayor was to come back to us with a recommendation?
That's where it was left last time, yeah.
Okay.
All in favor for adding the motion, Mary's motion to the agenda, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Passed unanimously. Therefore, we have an agenda that has been amended by the mayor to take action item H to the consent agenda. We will add an executive session and we will add a discussion item on the DEIA commission.
All right, great. Thanks.
Well, we need to vote for approval of the agenda. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstains? Passed unanimously. Mr. Mayor, you've got an agenda.
All right, great. So with that, let's move to citizens' comments. In citizens' comments, we will do 3 minutes tonight, and we open up citizens' comments to anyone in the attendee group. If you wish to provide citizens' comments tonight, just raise your digital virtual hand there, and we'll recognize you and bring you into the panelist side. And we ask for your name and your address, and we'll give you 3 minutes. I will have a clock going for you. When you hear the beeper go off, that means you have 10 seconds to wrap it up. So with that, is there anyone who wishes for citizens' comments tonight? I have Tori Horseman. Tori, let's bring Tori in. Tori, go ahead and unmute, and you have the floor.
Okay, I just came tonight because I really wanted to support the move to get the DEIA back under consideration and see that moving forward as in the agenda of the city council. That's all I came to say. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And I have Jessica Wadhams. I'm going to bring Jessica in, please. All right, Jessica, go ahead and unmute, and you have the floor.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to echo Tori's last comment. I appreciate, Mary, that you added this agenda item to the agenda. I am hopeful that council will hear community voice, particularly the BIPOC voice, that a DEIA commission is what is needed most. So thank you.
Am I having problems, or is everybody having problems?
Yeah, I seem to be having some issues too, Mayor. I think she was done. Jessica, raise your hand back again if you weren't done. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Yeah, Jessica, I think there's
Did
some
I?
connection issues. We want to bring her back in.
Okay, let's bring her back in.
Hey, Jessica, I think we have some internet issues. You want to talk again? I don't think we got everything.
Yeah, not sure what you guys heard. I just wanted to echo, and you can hear me okay right now, yes?
We got you.
Okay, great. I just wanted to echo Tori's comment that obviously I'm in support of a DEIA commission, and I hope that council, now that it's added to the agenda, will make that decision made and hear the community voice asking for that. So thank you. That's all.
All right, Jessica, we got all that. Thank you. And Carrie, I have a Carrie, K-A-R-I. Carrie, go ahead and unmute, and you have the floor.
Hi, thank you so much. My name is Carrie Johnson. I too am speaking tonight in support of a DEIA commission, specifically because I believe that the transparency that is offered by a commission is of utmost importance to the community so that they can see the work that's being done at a granular level. As a county arts commissioner, I know firsthand the difficulties that it takes to have a commission. I know all the rules, I've read them. I know Robert's rules like the back of my hand, and I know that it can feel cumbersome at times, but it's what's needed so that people in this community can have voices accurately being heard. Thank you.
All right, Carrie, thank you. And I have Lindsay Price.
Hi there. Can you hear me okay?
We got you, Lindsay. Go ahead.
Wonderful. Hi, I'm Lindsay Price, and I too want to voice my support of the DEIA Commission. Like Carrie said, I think the transparency is really important. I think that we give the city an opportunity to apply to be on the commission, and that we represent BIPOC voices well here in Lake Stevens. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you, Lindsay. And I have Stephanie Ruiz. Stephanie, go ahead.
Hi there. Can you hear me okay?
We've got you. Go ahead.
Okay. Sorry, I'm outside at a local restaurant, Rustic Cork. Anyhow, so I just wanted to express my support of a DEIA commission specifically. You know, some of those reasons include the fact that we're, as a community, really early in our journey in addressing the BIPOC population. And so there is some level of transparency and trust that needs to be built, and the structure of a commission will enable that and help, you know, drive that foundation that needs to happen in order to really build a good, solid pattern of trust. And so as a person of color, I know I take comfort in the fact that we would be represented as a commission. I also don't see any difference between us and a youth commission or a veteran commission. We have almost as equally a biggest presence as a veteran commission does. And I don't think we're any less important, and I don't think we should be treated any differently. Although I understand that there is, you know, some reasons to have an advisory board, and I don't disagree with them. I think that we need to prioritize BIPOC voices and lean into those and listen to them and let those voices lead the way here in this particular situation. So thank you, each and every council person. I think I've met with most of you, and I really appreciate you guys, as well as the mayor, hearing people of color out and prioritizing their voices. So appreciate your time.
Thank you, Stephanie. Do we have any other citizens who wish to provide comments tonight? I've got Vildon Kirby. Vildon. Vildon, go ahead and unmute and you have the floor.
Oh, okay. Hi, Brett. How are you?
Great. Thank you for the bread. It was awesome.
Oh, I was going to say, did you get the bread or did the animals get it?
It lasted about 10
Great.
minutes.
I'm so happy you're my neighbor, Brett. But I do want to raise my voice in the I'm sorry, this is just a really moment when the whole family came together that I wasn't expecting. I apologize. And I do want to raise my voice about, just want to give my opinion that I would love to see our city leading the way on having a diversity inclusion commission. And I want all of you to lead this, because this would be first time in Lake Stevens. And I think I raised my voice about, not raised my voice, I'm sorry. I gave you my opinion about when we met, why I would not want an advisory board. I'd rather have a commission, just like Stephanie indicated that more for transparency. And second, I don't think it should be connected to one person for that reason. And I want to be represented in this community. I love Lake Stevens. We moved here about 8 years ago. This became our community. I voted for you, Kim. I remember you coming to my door and shaking your hand. And I would love to see all of you being such a wonderful leaders and lead us with a diversity, equity, and inclusion commission.
All right, Vildon, great. We absolutely appreciate your comments, and
thanks for your vote, Vildon.
Yeah.
Okay.
Great, thank you. And I've got Robin McGee. Robin, go ahead and unmute and you have the floor.
Hi, yeah, so Robin McGee, Lake Stevens resident. So I want to thank the council for allowing time for the DEIA Commission presentation recently. And I would like to specifically thank Mayor John Nearing. I don't think he's here tonight, but just wanted to call out, it was great for him to take the time to show up and be there for that. Marysville has done a great job supporting their commission. I hope to see our council supporting one here in beautiful city of Lake Stevens. I know that there's certainly a lot of community support for this commission. I do want to agree with Carrie's assertion that a commission is superior to an advisory group. She mentioned some reasons why. We do need to ensure transparency and accountability for our community members. There's a lot we can learn from the folks in our city who are members of the BIPOC community, and I wholeheartedly support that, and I hope this council does as well. Thank you.
All right, great. Thank you, Robin. And do we have anybody else raise their hand that would like to provide citizens' comments for tonight? Not seeing any other hands. Kelly, are you seeing any hands?
I'm not, Mayor.
There's no one hiding in a...
One more.
All right, I've got Nina. Nina, you have the floor. Go ahead. Go ahead and unmute. There you go.
Hello, City Council. Thanks for having us part of the meeting tonight. I'm a little out of breath because I've been chasing my kids around, but I wanted to just quickly kind of lend my vocal support of the DEIA Commission. Having been part of Washington State and the community work that happens in communities based off of the commission, I can personally give you an example of how a commission actually helped me through a very hard time as a person of color back when I was living in the Seattle region. And so I would really highly recommend that we go ahead and move forward with a DEI commission here in Lake Stevens so that everybody in this community feels cared for to the utmost. So just wanted to add my 2 cents as a mom of 2 young kids who I hope will be taken care of as well for as long as we're here in Lake Stevens. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Nina. And do we have anybody else who would like to provide citizens' comments for tonight? All right, not seeing any other hands. Let's move to the next item, which is council business. Council President Daughtry.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Let's start with Gary Petersagen, please.
Thank you, Council President Daughtry. Not too much to report on. Attended Planning Commission last week. Very vibrant discussion on a number of things, one of which we're hearing tonight. So regarding the density issue. I think that's all I have for you regarding that. Looking forward to next week and filing date and party time with election season coming up. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Council Member Steve Ewing.
So I also participated in the Planning Commission meeting. Agree, grateful for the robust discussion that was had. Also want to commend Jerry Stumbaugh and the city for working together for the senior center and the efforts that are being made there. I know Jerry is an active part of our seniors, and part of us being inclusive as a city is to include the seniors, which represent a large demographic in our city. So I'm grateful for him and his advocacy for that vulnerable population.
Okay, thank you. Council Member Mary Dickinson.
Okay, kudos. That's what I've got tonight. First of all, kudos to this kid from Lake Stevens who won the Madden national title. When I see Lake Stevens in a positive way on the front page of the Herald, I'm a happy camper. Also, kudos to the churches who are helping pack up and move the museum's artifacts. That's a lot of work. And I know they've been concerned about that. And with the help of those churches, they'll get it done. And I want to thank Grace King, our engineer, our city engineer, for her dedicated service to Lake Stevens. And I wish her well in her new job. I also
Looks like we lost Mary for a couple of minutes. Okay, Mary, if you can hear us, we're going to move on and you can come back on again, okay? We'll move on to Council Member Sean Frederick.
Thank you, Councilmember Daughtry. The only thing I have is that attended the Veterans Commission meeting. Lots of conversation about what will it look like. Some of the activities we've tried to get going to support our veterans, including a coffee clutch, holding off on some of those until we can actually have in-person meetings. Looking at some of the things we can do in terms of moving forward, progress with the Lake Stevens being a Purple Heart city and getting all of the signs posted so that can be acknowledged. Just really looking at how we can use the current momentum to get some of those initiatives that we've had on the burner for quite a while moving forward, to include the Veterans Foundation. And so that's all I have for this evening.
Thank you. Let's go back to Councilmember Mary Dickinson so you can finish. Are you okay, Mary? You there? I guess not. Let's go to Councilmember Angie Jorstad.
Good evening. Thank you, Council President Daughtry. We have the Health District Board meeting this afternoon. Great presentation, as always, by Dr. Chris Spitters, giving us up-to-date information about trends and numbers. I think that what sort of popped out the most for me, there is an intention now to move away from, I guess not move away, to start to have vaccinations more available in community centers. So primary care doctors, pharmacies, local community areas, and there will be sort of a moving away gradually from the mass vaccination sites. But as of now, those are all still up and running, and they are able to provide vaccinations to folks that are just dropping in. So there's no, while they still encourage folks to make an appointment, you can just drive up to those sites and get your shot in the arm. So there are close to 200,000 people in Snohomish County who are fully vaccinated, and another 16 and under, and another 108,000 folks that are partially vaccinated. So now the work, I think Dr. Spitters referred to the low-hanging fruit. Now the work is to get to those folks in those communities that may have barriers to getting to vaccination sites, may be vaccine hesitant, may have, for a number of reasons, may just not sort of have this on their radar. So still a lot of work to do. Speaking of a lot of work, it was really interesting. You know, I think we've come to associate the health district with COVID-19 24/7. But we were reminded today that there's other work that the health district needs to do. There's a small E. coli outbreak happening in Snohomish and King counties. There was a little bit about it on the news, I think, today. But they talked a bit about the work that's doing to trace that and to find the source and to contain that as much as possible and help treat the mostly children who have been impacted in this. So just a good reminder that public health is more than just COVID-19, and they're doing a tremendous job. And I think we're incredibly fortunate to live in Snohomish County and have Sean at the helm and the health district that we have. So just wanted to give a shout out and let folks know kind of where we're at. We're not out of the woods. Keep wearing your masks, washing your hands, socially distance. That's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you. Council Member Marcus Tadgett.
Good evening, everyone. Let's see, attended the Veterans Commission with Sean. I think Sean pretty much nailed that on the head, looking at how the foundation will move forward. And then I also attended Parks last night and got a great overview of the parks. I have to say, really excited about all the parks and seeing everyone out there in the sunshine out enjoying it. It's really great. We've got a lot of great parks and a lot of great ideas moving forward out there. So that would be it for me tonight.
Thank you. And Councilmember Mary Dickinson, did you have anything else you needed to talk about before you froze up? I mean your Zoom froze up, not you.
No, but thanks for asking, because I just want you to know that I was at Senior Center board meeting, and I did go to the Parks board because I just love to hear what they're up to. One thing I learned at the Senior Center board meeting was they had 321.75 volunteer hours last month, and they served 651 free meals. They're doing amazing work, and they're beginning to go over to the community center garden, the community gardens, so that they can grow more vegetables and things for these lunches that they're handing out. So they're working darn hard, and I agree with Councilmember Jorstad that we are darn lucky to have Councilmember Fredericks in the game. Yay.
Okay, thank you. I guess it's my turn. I also went to the Veterans Commission meeting. And Marcus and Sean said most of that. Community Transit Board has been meeting regularly, of course, on Zoom. We've been doing a lot of different things, trying to get past COVID. All the safety measures we're taking on for the riders and for our bus drivers. We have had positive bus drivers come down with a positive on COVID. We have had one death, and that was very early on. It was in last March, not last March, the March before that. Nobody else has passed away from community transit for that, which is good. We had suspended fares so that everybody rode free for those that needed to, and that helped our less fortunate people in the community get to where they needed to go, especially for some of the workers that don't have a ride or whatever to get to work. So that worked out really, really well. That's being looked at again to resume fares soon, but we don't know when yet. Today, the mayor and I attended the Veterans War Memorial Board. We hadn't met since in 2019 was the last time we met. Usually we meet quarterly. COVID pretty much set that back. And today we made the decision that the War Memorial Board has no useful function anymore because the new War Memorial. And so we voted to dissolve that 501c3 and disperse funds to the American Legion, what was it called, Brett?
Well, just the American Legion 181 to to use the money with youth sorts of.
Yeah, all their youth programs. I can't remember what the term was they use now. I'm sorry, I'll have that when they actually do it. So anyway, there'll be I'm disillusioned that that went away. I've been on that board ever since I've been in Lake Stevens. So that is the end of that. Then I have two other things. I'd like to point out that we have Miss Emma Miner from the Youth Advisory Council with us tonight. I don't see anybody else. If there's somebody else that is here from the Youth Advisory Council that I missed, please raise your hand so I can see it. And the last and not the least is I owe Mary Dickinson an apology for being rather flippant last week and didn't really cut her off, but I was trying to be funny. It didn't work. I recognize that it didn't work. And so, Mary, I apologize. I will try not to do that again, at least to you. Angie, you're next. Actually, I think Marcus was next. I think, yeah, on my list, it's Marcus is next. So anyway, Mary, I apologize. I'll try not to. I think I'm funny, but a lot of times I'm not. So there you go. So, Mr. Mayor, I think that is it for guests or for the council business.
All right, I appreciate it. Great stuff from all the council members. Good to see everybody out there being active and getting our community moving forward, which is great. It's the goal. I did have a really good meeting last week with the VOA and the food bank, continuing that work of getting the food bank moving. If you haven't noticed, they put up the little orange barriers around the food bank property. So they're going to start moving dirt here and getting that prepped so we can get the food bank up and going. They are still short a little bit of money, so we need to reach in and get some pockets emptied out so we can finish that work out. Also been working quite a bit with the staff. There's so many moving parts this summer with the downtown construction and moving entities and buildings, and so staff has been doing just a great job with that, and I commend them for that. And I also took an opportunity this week to tour Lake Stevens Middle School with the principal and see challenges that they have and see the kids in class and see what sorts of issues they're having. And it was a very good tour. Great little school. So with that, we will move to, we do have a city department report tonight from Barb on a finance update. Barb.
Thank you, Council. I put a couple of things in your packet. One is the financial summary and the other is the impact fee report. So I don't want to go through these. There's a lot of detail within each report, but I did want to highlight a couple things. Kelly, can I share my screen?
Yes, you've got permission.
Thank you. Okay, so this is just the department report that I included in your packet. I wanted to note that overall cash and investments right now are about 29.8 million. That is across all the funds. That's our general fund, the restricted funds, utility, stormwater fund, as well as our capital funds. So we're sitting at about 29.8 million. citywide revenue is 7.7 million. That's about 12%. This is in line with the normal trend. We get our property taxes in April and October, as well as our stormwater fees, because those come in with property taxes. They're usually paid with property taxes. Important one is total sales tax receipts are 36% of the budget. That's actually up 17% over last year. And as we remember, January to March was actually pre-COVID. So this is actually really good numbers at this point. Looking at construction sales tax and accommodation and food services are both down slightly. We do expect the construction sales tax to continue increasing as we start building out our commercial. The retail sales tax, which is up 32% over prior year. That's huge. That is a really good number for us. COVID didn't really affect us that much in 2020. So as we're actually increasing over 2020, it's a really big deal. So this is just taking a look at our percentages overall of each industry. And then building permits and land use permits, as you remember, those are restricted revenues that have to be used towards permits, permit related activities. Those are both down slightly over prior year. Last year, there was a number of developments and permits that came in right at the beginning of the year. So we will be taking a look at these to determine if we have the right known and suspected number of permits and developments coming in. So we'll continue taking a look at this. We do expect that number to continue going up over the year. Real estate excise taxes, as you know, buying and selling of houses is huge right now. Those taxes are at 36% of the total budget, which is actually an increase of about $272,000 over last year. So that's another big one. Expenditures were 12% of the budget. All departments are within budget expectations. There are a couple of departments that have actually spent more than the normal trending 25%, but that is due to beginning of the year payments. So insurance payments, membership dues, that type of thing. Interfund loan payment, we still have the one interfund loan out. That one is on the 20th Street Southeast. We're waiting on that TIB grant to fully come in. It should be in, we actually expect it in June. So we anticipate having the loan fully repaid by July. So that will be good to get off our books. We have a few, based on this information, we have a few positions that we were holding in the 2021 budget that were approved to be hired in June, and then one in September. I believe that we were holding off the first quarter to find out how the revenues were coming in, how sales tax would be coming in. Based on how our expectations of sales tax and also REIT and those types of things are being exceeded, we would recommend going ahead and moving forward with advertising hiring of these positions. That would be, we have one part-time HR technician. We have one, so right now, deputy clerk and finance, or the clerk's office and finance share a person. That person would, there would be added a full-time deputy clerk administrative assistant, and then the current position would become a full-time accountant position. Those are both slated for, all three of those are slated for June 1st. And then patrol officers, there were two that were approved in the 2020 budget. One was a 6/1 start and one is a 9/1 start. And then the one last thing that was also approved waiting for June 1st was for the non-represented staff, a 1% deferred comp match. So those things will begin taking place in June. I don't need any action on this as it is in the budget, but a nice head nod from the council that yes, we should go ahead and move forward with this based on our current revenues, and our current proposed revenues would be good. Do I have any questions on that I can answer before I kind of mention the impact fee report?
Hey, Barb, so just the retail sales tax, is there any particular sector of that is seeing greater revenue? Is that due to restaurants opening up more? Is that restaurant sales tied to that, or what is that attributed to?
No, the accommodation food services, that's our restaurants. So that is actually down over last year. But again, this is still pre-COVID. March, the first quarter of 2020 was pre-COVID. So we are down over that period because we're still at the 25/50% occupancy. The retail sales tax really is because we are destination-based sales tax in Washington state. So everything that's purchased and delivered to a residence or a business in the city of Lake Stevens gets that sales tax. That is why the COVID sales tax issues that most other cities are having, we're not having. People aren't ordering things from our stores to be delivered outside of the city of Lake Stevens. It's the other way around. So we're actually benefiting from residents or from businesses in other cities at this point. And Doug is nodding his head, yes. Destination-based sales tax really helped the city of Lake Stevens. It always has. So. Any other questions on that? Otherwise, switch my screen.
I think most of that came from my house. See, that time I was funny. Last week, not so much.
And this is just the impact fee report that we put in. This is required by an RCW to get this impact fee report to council each year. This is park mitigation fees and traffic mitigation fees. Just a reminder, traffic mitigation fees are collected in 3 separate zones. TIZ 1 is East Lake Stevens, that's Old Lake Stevens. TIZ 2, West Lake Stevens. TIZ 3, South, that's the most recent 2010 annexation. My assumption is that Public Works and Planning and Community Development will need to look at whether they plan to add an additional TIZ for the new annexation area, or what they plan to do with that. So that will be all discussed and planned out in Planning and Community Development and Public Works. So just to kind of walk through, this is the revenue. As you can see, we're not getting any of these old SEPA. We don't plan under SEPA anymore. This is when we did our annexation in 2010. We got some annexation dollars, some traffic mitigation dollars from the county. And then we have our TIZ 1, 2, and 3. So you can see how much revenue we actually received in each zone over the last year. The next section breaks down all of our expenditures by project. There's a lot of information in here that I actually talked to Councilmember Dickinson earlier about today that I should probably have put in there, kind of a summary. In 2020, here's what we spent. All prior years, here's the dollar amount we spent on this project. So it's a little more clear, but we wanted to give you the background on these long projects. So anyway, this is all the projects that we've done with TIZ funds. Here's the projects we've done with park and tree mitigation over the last few years. As I mentioned last week, when we were going through some stuff, we have spent over $2 million, as you can see, more than $2 million for the last few years in parks. And then our fund balances, as you can see, our 2020 fund balances based on the spending, we only have about $429,000 left in parks. Sorry, I don't want to highlight the entire sheet there. So 429 in parks, and then we have some left in TIZ 1, 2, and 3. Some of these in lieu of, those are for ending loan. Oh, we have an interfund loaned outstanding that needs to get paid back into the fund as well. So this is just something to kind of let you know how much, this is where we get we pay for a lot of our capital projects out of, is traffic impact fees and park impact fees. We've been doing a lot of work out there, as obviously you guys can see just by, downtown and the parks that we're putting in. So just taking a look at this kind of goes along with the conversation of the capital projects last year, our last meeting, that we definitely need to start prioritizing, as we have definitely spent down a lot of these large capital fund amounts or funds that we have. So just a heads up on that. If you have any questions for me, let me know. I know it's a lot of information. It's just one of those required reports that we want to make sure that you guys get and you can take a look at. And that's all I had for you. I just want to give you a quick rundown on traffic mitigation, park mitigation. I see a couple questions out there.
Barb, I have a question for you on the mitigation fees. At what point are those fees actually collected? Is it final plat, building permit, occupancy?
Director Wright?
They are collected at the time of building permit. You'll recall a number of years ago, we did adopt a program that those fees could be deferred until occupancy. No one has ever used that program.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Great presentation, Barb. A lot of information, like you said.
Thanks.
All right, any other questions for Barb? Perfect. Let's move along then to our guest business. And he's not really a guest, he's part of the family. The great Doug Levy, our lobbyist. He has a report for us from the legislative session. Go ahead.
Thanks, Mayor, and thanks, council members. Good evening to you all and to staff and anyone who's stuck around. It sounded like we had one youth advisory council person. So I think Kelly was going to be my screen provider here. I had sent a longer outline and then a more compact PowerPoint we'll work off of to give you a sense of the session that was just completed at the end of April. So let's see, Kelly started screen sharing.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes,
we can hear you.
I am having some major connectivity issues, so bear with me. In fact, Mayor, I made you co-host just in case I drop off completely.
Okay.
Sorry, Doug, can you just start and I will get this going as soon as I can?
Sure.
Okay.
So just to give you a sense on an overview side, this was frankly a session like we'd never seen before. I don't know that we will ever see it again, and that's because the legislature went from an in-person Olympia-based legislature to a almost entirely remote and virtual legislature. So meetings by Zoom and Teams and hearings by Zoom and voting that way as well. Just to give you one data point that to me is sort of fascinating. In one sense, the legislature was in a bubble and not approachable. In another sense, they were really for everybody throughout the state a couple of clicks away. So the legislature keeps data on how many people show up to testify at hearings and even how many people sign up but don't wish to testify. And in 2019, during the session, the entire session, there were 4,850 people that signed up to testify or signed up for a bill but didn't wish to testify. In 2021, that number was 31,899. It's sort of staggering just how much more access to the system there was. Whether you agree or have a disagreement with the flavor of the legislature or the issues they took on, I think it's safe to say it was a very activist legislature in 2021. So I put in the PowerPoint the list of things that they did. They did 2 carbon reduction bills. They did a whole series of policing reform measures. We will talk about that. They approved a capital gains tax on assets over $250,000. We already know we're going to see a legal challenge to that. They funded a working families tax exemption program that had been on the books since 2008 but had never been funded. They reacted to what we call the Blake decision on drug possession, and they've set up a whole sea change in how drug possession crimes will be dealt with in the future. And then probably the most robust and sweeping package of affordable housing and rental assistance legislation we've seen in a long, long time, if ever. Several months ago, you'll recall that I was writing memos to you and alerting you to the fact that it looked like the legislature was facing an enormous deficit And we were talking about shortfalls of several $billion. As it turned out, and Barb's report, I think, gives you a good microcosm. The economy ended up improving. There was a large infusion of federal dollars. There have now been 5 different coronavirus relief packages approved in Congress, the last of which, the American Rescue Plan Act, involved about $350 billion worth of state and local government assistance. And so what we thought was going to be a real crisis-oriented budget or set of budgets in the legislature did not turn out that way. Transportation, which tended to be hit the hardest due to the impact on driving and gas tax and tolling revenues, was more of a keep things on track budget. The capital budget, and we'll talk about how that benefited Lake Stevens, was an outstanding one. And then, below the radar, I think a little bit out of the main spotlight, the legislature also passed several economic development bills that I think could be very user-friendly for you all, and we'll talk about that. So big picture basis for cities. First of all, you always go into these legislative sessions wanting to make sure you're not going backward on things like revenues and the financial outlook. And so that was good news. The operating budget that the legislature passed protected all the what we call the state shared revenues that get distributed down to the local level, liquor taxes, criminal justice assistance, and the like. And there was actually a bump up from $30 million for the biennium before to $40 million this coming biennium for marijuana excise tax distributions. So you take 10 million and you slice it and dice it across the state. That's not a windfall for Lake Stevens, but it's a little bit extra that helps. And then something we keep an eye on, and I heard Barb note the fact that 2 new officers were being approved. And so any newly hired officers in our state have to go through the Basic Law Enforcement Academy, and the state in the budget is paying for 15 classes a year, which during this sort of pandemic time should be a goodly number to hopefully avoid any backups and queuing getting folks in. The other thing that was very good from a local government standpoint is the legislature created a $20 million what you would call unfunded mandates prevention account for cities in the final operating budget for helping us to address law enforcement and criminal justice costs from legislation they approved both in 2020 and 2021. Whether that becomes an ongoing account, we'll have to see, but that was a nice one-timer for sure. And then if you take the American Rescue Plan Act money at the federal level and that state assistance and then a fiscal flexibility bill, House Bill 1069, we got a little bit of help on both new revenue and new flexibility to spend existing dollars. Policing reform bills, I'll get into naming several of them, but I would say that most, if not all of these are workable. There were a couple that, working with the mayor and the chief, we had concerns about that didn't pass, and I'll cover that. I mentioned affordable housing and rental assistance, a lot of progress there. And then a capital budget that I think provides several funding opportunities that I've sent along to City Hall, and a really, really significant amount of state and federal money for broadband. Oh, there we go. So Kelly, I don't know if you can forward and catch up with me here.
Actually, Doug, I apologize. The mayor's actually controlling this. I've had some issues on my end, so.
Okay. So, there's always, it's never just all glowing and fantastic stuff. So there's a few concerns and question marks I want to point to from the session. And that is, yeah, you've got it, Mr. Mayor. No, you were just on it. We had hopes that the legislature would do a new transportation revenue package, especially when you consider things like the US 2 trestle They did not. There's still some question of whether there'll be a special session or whether that'll just get delayed. This Blake fix that I talked about on drug possession, I think is a really new and grand experiment by the legislature, and the jury's out on whether this is going to work and whether there will be all of the drug treatment and services in place to make it work and the funding to make it work. Cities and counties and special districts have gone to the legislature for years and noted that, you know, no matter where your politics are, we have a 1% property tax limitation under the law that is very different than what happens to your costs every year. So you end up with a 1% limitation on revenues, typically inflationary costs above that kind of handcuffs you. And the legislature has not shown much desire to address that and didn't in 2021 either. And then a lot of Growth Management Act legislation did not make it. I'll make a quick mention of Senate Bill 5368 that could be useful for you. And then I linked for you, AWC did their own sort of pro-con list across subject areas, so you can pull that one at your leisure. So next slide. So let's get down to, the most important city, and that's us, and look at how we did here. I think a really good session, and had transportation happened, I think we would have vaulted that up into the amazing category. But really good foundation on some of these transportation projects, I would say. You know, on the US 2 trestle, we had spending plans that either fully funded the whole set of improvements and replacement of the structure, and in the House got us a ways there. That's a great foundation to build from. You know, this will become a broken record, but you don't get there without a new revenue package. And if you look down the list here, we were really fortunate in that all of the projects we submitted to be included in the transportation spending plan were. So South Lake Stevens Road, 20th and Main, that 16th and Centennial Trail connector. So all of those things found their way onto lists that as the legislature takes up transportation, they will be on both of the spending lists that were out there. So that's very positive progress, but it's not money in hand, unfortunately. So talking about a transportation package, which was a priority of ours, while it did not pass, the Senate went the furthest in offering revenue and spending and bonding bills. The legislature actually, in the 2 carbon bills that I mentioned earlier, in order for those to go into full implementation, there have to be new revenue transportation packages approved. So I think there's an incentive for the legislature to come back in a special session. You know, if you're going to ask me the question of will they or won't they, people often don't do very well trying to predict the legislature in those settings. So there's some notion that they may come back in the fall. We will see. Next slide, please. So another transportation note, I'll take you all the way back to the beginning of the session. Remember when we were looking at, you know, the potential of cuts related budgets, the governor had placed a number of projects on pause, and that included some really mission critical SR9 work in Lake Stevens, including the SR9 20th area improvements to accommodate Costco and the culvert removal work we just got funded the session before. So we in Snohomish County and many others worked hard to remove that pause button. And so that was a nice win on transportation at the beginning of the session. Another one of our priorities that was just a full home run, we asked for $2.1 million for the phase 3 work of the Civic Center and downtown revitalization work you folks are well down the road with. And that was in the final capital budget. So that was terrific. There was also enough money in what's called the Land and Water Conservation Fund so that you will get money from within that fund for your Eagle Ridge project. There was a lot of money from a Lake Stevens community basis in for snow aisle and library and early learning money, some for Sherwood Community Services, and then over $400 million for broadband. And I want to talk about that on a city-specific basis later. And then, you know, we had a priority of let's protect and enhance and flex up fiscal resources if possible. Again, that was all done. Policing reforms, I think we should feel pretty good. The two of the bills we had the most concern over, there was House Bill 1202 that would have really expanded potential liability over what might happen in you know, any litigation with policing cases and personnel, and the AWC had opposed 1202 very adamantly. It, as one example, would have extended liability to all of the police training, even though we know that much of that doesn't occur in your city halls. It occurs at places like the Academy. So we had a concern about that bill, did not pass. The Community Oversight Board, I think, was less a concern about the concept versus a concern about some of the specifics and the things like, you know, having citizen groups usurp the role all of you have as city councils with, you know, authority over the investigative role and things like that. So 1203 did not pass. These are several of the bills that did. House Bill 1267 sets up a new Office of Independent Investigations. House Bill 1054 on tactics bans chokeholds and no-knock warrants, restricts the use of neck restraints. House Bill 1310 says that you should go through a protocol of exhausting non-use of force, or what's the word I'm looking for? De-escalation. Sorry, was on the tip of my tongue. Use de-escalation before you get to use of force. Senate Bill 5051 strengthens the possibility of decertifying officers who are not doing what they're supposed to do. 5066 is a duty to intervene if you see a fellow officer doing something inappropriate. Senate Bill 5259 for the first time is going to take all the use of force data that is at individual law enforcement agencies and collect it and keep it on a statewide basis. And then Senate Bill 5055 sets up state arbitration panels on personnel grievance situations so that that's kind of centralized and dealt with that way. Next slide, please. So a few other things I think from a Lake Stevens standpoint that were very good that I alluded to in some ways earlier. House Bill 1386 had been very much on our scope. That was a, there has been a 10-year property tax exemption program for unused and underutilized manufacturing industrial lands that had been afforded only to Marysville, Arlington, and Lake Stevens. It was about to expire, and we worked with Representative Emily Wicks on a bill to extend that. The legislature ended up not only extending it for the 3 cities, but granting that authority to all cities and counties. Nonetheless, you will still have the ability to grant this exemption as a recruiting tool, and thinking of areas like your Hartford industrial area, a nice toolbox item to have. The legislature also for the first time authorized what we call tax increment financing. The whole notion of using infrastructure improvements and you know, a piece of the property tax to help activate larger projects and bring in larger developments that otherwise might not come to the state of Washington. That is done only on the local property tax increments in House Bill 1189, but it's still an economic development tool that had never been granted to us before. The Main Street program was both extended and expanded. I don't think you're a certified Main Street community at this point, but if you have desires to do so, now would be a good time to think about it. Senate Bill 5368 for Lake Stevens, just as a city that has to contemplate further annexations as you grow into your PAA. It even streamlines further the notion of an interlocal agreement-based annexation. And then Senate Bill 5287, MFTE stands for Multifamily Tax Exemption Program. A lot of negotiation and compromise in this bill, and it allows you to keep and continue using an 8-year property tax exemption program for new multifamily housing. So another sort of economic development piece that you can use. Next slide, please, Mr. Mayor. Whenever we talk about the legislature and the legislative session, it's never a one-person job. You know, I appreciate your kind words in introducing me, but it's always what I call it takes a village activity. And so I want to thank the mayor and the council for having me do what I do and working with me so collaboratively, not only this year, but over all the years I've represented you. And a big shout out to Mayor Gailey for, my gosh, testifying several times in front of committees and being available. And thank you, Councilmember Dickinson, for the day you spent with us at several meetings with our members. And then I want to really extend kudos to our 344th District lawmakers. They all did very positive things to help your community. Senator Hobbs on the transportation front and on the Civic Center Phase 3, it was in the Senate budget in full, and that's what led to it being in the final one. Representative Lovick worked with us extensively on some of the policing reform bills and spent a goodly amount of time with the chief and the mayor and I. Representative Berg on some of these economic development tools and capital budget items. All of them, I think, made themselves accessible to us and supported us on a number of fronts. And then the staff, you know, I send you guys, I don't know how many gobs of emails, but you're always so responsive and helpful. And maybe a special level of shout out amongst all the staff. I don't know how many forms Russ Wright filled out for you all on capital and transportation requests, folks, but it was a lot. And so I want to thank Russ for everything he did. The chief put in a lot of time on the policing bills and organizing the Snohomish County chief. So a big thank you to him. And Kelly, who, you know, is just our conduit and has been great to work with and organized a lot of signatures from community organizations that did a big capital budget letter that helped us get that 2.1 million. So a thanks to Kelly Chellen as well. Next slide. And then just a look ahead to some key things. Transportation, already doing some thinking on maybe what we in the city and those of us in Snohomish County can do, and reaching out to Senator Hobbs to see if there's a way to kickstart discussions on transportation. That's one item in the immediate scope. I mentioned to you some of these potential funding opportunities and tools. I pulled out a lot of the language in areas like Department of Commerce where there's some new grant opportunities and have provided that to staff. Again, I think for you all where the mayor and others have talked about broadband gaps, I'd really love to see you exploit that for areas like Hartford. So more to come there. The economic development bills I hope can be useful to you. And then a reminder that probably by mid, if not late June, I will have a comprehensive session report that I typically do that's going to give you an overview and, you know, details on how we did on our agenda and key bills that passed or didn't pass and will be coming back. Some things you need to implement to keep yourself legal, funding opportunities and the like. And then, you know, whether I'm sending you things or not, you know, I'm very purposely not on an hourly retainer for you all. I'm on a contract where you can ask me to help and be part of a meeting or, you know, send your questions along. And my job is to answer yes to those things. So I'm available to assist as you need me. I think that does my PowerPoint. Thank you all so much, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Doug, I just wanted to say thanks for all your hard work down there. I know probably telecommuting and doing everything by Zoom makes it so you're not face to face like normal. But thanks for all you do. I know I've said several times your work that you do for the city of Lake Stevens has been so valuable, and you're worth every penny we pay you. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Tadgen. And we got to unveil a new dress code in the 2021 session. You could do a shirt and tie and sweats, or a shirt and tie and blue jeans. Who knew?
I'm sure you saved some money on your leather shoes too, so you didn't have to waste any more money on that. So I'd like to extend my thanks to you also, Doug, on several fronts. The skit, SCC, and everything else that you've helped with over the years. And this year you were especially busy. It was refreshing to get your reports every week. I like to read those and help me keep up with what was going on in the legislature much better than me looking for it myself. So thank you very much.
Very welcome.
This is Angie. I just want to add my 2 cents. When I wear my other hat, I am part of several different legislative calls throughout the session, and most of those involve summaries of what's happening on the floor. And I often find myself wishing that the folks that we're listening to could be as articulate and clear as you are in your regular emails. So I know that I'm sort of channeling you and I'm listening to them, and just really appreciate your clarity and your communication and the information you provide. So thank you so much for what you do.
Councilmember Georgestead, thank you for the kind words.
I just need to say that I know there's other cities that need you. They've come to me and they said, well, how is your lobbyist working for you? And I tell them, all right, you need to reach out to him because he's amazing and your city probably needs him. If they don't have Doug Levy, they're missing something. You're just
Gary, he's ours. Don't offer him up to other places.
Harry, keep your mouth closed there.
Okay.
Yeah, we need the money in Lake Stevens, not other communities.
You're giving away the secret sauce here.
I don't think it's a secret, though. I hate to tell you.
Thanks for your time and effort, Doug. The transportation issue is the big bugaboo, I guess, in this whole thing. And what is the likelihood of a special session and actually sitting down and trying to figure this thing out? It seems like, we get about 3/4 of the way and then everybody runs. Any comments you could offer?
Yeah, that's a tough one. The legislature went down the path a bit. I think the new dynamic this session that in their defense sort of brings in all sorts of new layers and complications, and that's using carbon-based ways to pay for the system. So they kind of reached that tipping point where there were enough of them that wanted to do that. But then, those bills took a long time to get through the system. And then I have to say the Senate and the House have very different ideas on not only how you structure those, but what you use the revenues for. Senator Hobbs, for example, I think envisioned using a fair amount of that for culverts under the state's legal obligations. The House much more on multimodal and electrification of the transportation system. So you have, I think, very differing ideas there. You have some different ideas of just how to pay for transportation overall. And it's new, it's new gas taxes, it's votes on, asking people to pay more money at the pump. Never easy. And unfortunately, I wish I could tell you otherwise, but it often takes a couple or a few sessions to pass a transportation package. I think it's just enormously frustrating because you all have now been waiting, I want to say about a decade and a half on the trestle, and you shouldn't have to wait. It's the good thing is it's acknowledged as one of the most important projects in the state. The not so good thing is it's still not paid for.
Yeah, if I remember right, the 2015 Connecting Washington took us 5 sessions to get done when we first started talking about that. And that's what got us the Highway 9204 money. And the other projects throughout Snohomish County and throughout the state. There was a lot of projects on Connecting Washington. But it does take time. It's amazing how much time it takes to get everybody on board and the political will to do something like raise the gas tax or those kinds of things. So it's impressive to watch the session, to watch the process, but it's exceedingly slow. It is in 2015, I was like, I can finally breathe. We got it, we got it through. So I was hoping we were going to get it done this year, but the trestle is a very important thing to everybody here, and it goes without saying, but hopefully it will go into a special session and try to figure it out.
Yeah, and I have to give, your senator kudos here because, he was very firm in saying $1.8 billion is what it's going to take. And that's what I'm going to put in my plan. And Snohomish County, please back me up. And there was a great letter that was put together from the county and all the cities that said, yeah, it's a $1.8 billion piece of business. And then having all of the elected officials show up in spades and testify to that, I think was just great.
And Senator Hobbs did that while he was on active duty down in Texas. So it's a good thing Zoom was there.
Hey, great, Doug. Hey, appreciate the presentation, and I'll just follow up and say appreciate you being on the team. It's always our best time to talk with Doug is 5:30 in the morning via text and emails. So if you don't know that already, then that's how you get hold of Doug. Appreciate your work, Doug. We'll keep moving forward.
Thank you all very much. Thank you, Mayor.
Hey, with that, can we get a motion to for the consent agenda, please?
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? Okay, consent agenda passes. And with that, we'll go to the public hearing, which is item F. And that's going to be David. Ordinance 1118, adoption of SEPA flexible thresholds.
All right. Thank you, Mayor Gailey. Council members, Kelly, I'm going to share my screen. That's possible.
Yes, let me just, yep, you should be good to go.
All right. So thank you, David Levitan, Planning Manager. We're here tonight to consider adoption of SEPA flexible thresholds for minor new construction. Just a little bit of background information. So the city currently within Lake Stevens Municipal Code section 16.04.050 has adopted by reference the standard categorical exemption thresholds for minor new constructions. That's things like single family residential development, multifamily, commercial, parking lots, and grading. But the Washington Administrative Code also provides a process for cities to adopt higher flexible thresholds. One of the major requirements for that is the city is required to demonstrate that it has adequate environmental regulations at the local, state, and federal level in place to mitigate any potential environmental impacts. So the Planning Commission held a number of work sessions on this, and the City Council also held one back on February 16th. We got some really good feedback on that, made some amendments that are reflected in the proposed thresholds that we will be sharing with you tonight and that are proposed for adoption as part of Ordinance 1118. So this is an overview of our current thresholds, which are the standard thresholds. The maximum thresholds allowed by state law is the middle column there, and then the proposed thresholds that are included in part of Ordinance 1118 are the right column. So if you look at that right column, the city is proposing to adopt the maximum thresholds for grading as far as cut and fill, parking, commercial development. We're proposing, based on some council feedback, to leave the agricultural exemption at the same level, just basically based on the vision for Lake Stevens. The council felt there wasn't a need to raise that. And then we're proposing to raise the thresholds for single family residential and multifamily residential above our current threshold to about half the maximum threshold. And so just a little bit on the procedure. We have met all the statutory and procedural requirements, provided notice to both the State Department of Commerce and the Department of Ecology, provided the required public notices for both the Planning Commission and City Council public hearings, and prepared a SEPA checklist and issued a determination of non-significance under the State Environmental Policy Act, and did not receive any public or agency comments. So this is a type 6 legislative amendment. So it went through a Planning Commission public hearing where they were asked to make a recommendation to City Council. Staff provided an overview of the proposal and findings. There was one public comment that was received from the Master Builders Association of King and Snohomish Counties, which is included in attachment 3. That was from Dylan Sluter, who also provided public comment directly to the City Council, I believe last Thursday, basically reiterating their support for the city adopting flexible thresholds, but also requesting that the city adopt the maximum threshold. So instead of 15 single-family residential units, the master builders are requesting that the city adopt the maximum 30 single-family residential units. And instead of the proposed 30 multifamily residential unit threshold, they are requesting that the city adopt the maximum, which is 60 multifamily residential units. If you'll remember back from our February 16th work session on this, Councilmember Peter Sagan kind of took the lead on that one and requested that staff provided a little bit more quantitative analysis. We did kind of some analysis on the fly during that work session and kind of analyzed and determined that the impacts related to a 30,000 square foot commercial development were kind of on par with a 30 unit multifamily residential building, and kind of similarly on par as far as impervious surface, and this kind of general size and scope of the development with a 15 unit subdivision. So that's where the recommendations came from. On April 21st, the commission did discuss amending the proposal to raise those residential thresholds to the maximum. There was a motion made to amend the staff recommendation to bump up those thresholds to 30 single-family residential units and 60 multifamily residential units. But that did not pass, and ultimately the Planning Commission made a unanimous recommendation for the council to adopt the thresholds, which are identified in Ordinance 1118. So what staff is requesting of council tonight is to take public comment on the proposed amendments, deliberate and discuss the Planning Commission's recommendation, and then to approve Ordinance 1118 as proposed, or with any requested changes. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right, do we have any questions for David?
David, just one clarification. I think in your presentation, you mentioned that the state has, I don't remember the wording that you used, but the state has requirements for environmental regulations, kind of a threshold type bar. And I believe you said we meet those. Is that correct?
Yeah, so basically when you're proposing to raise your thresholds from the standard thresholds to flexible thresholds, you're required to provide documentation to the State Department of Ecology and note how kind of all the required elements of the environment that are covered by the SEPA environmental checklist, that the city can prove that there are adequate regulations in place to basically address all of those topics that are covered by the SEPA checklist. And we provided that notice to the Department of Ecology, and as required, sent that out to affected tribes, affected jurisdictions at the local, kind of regional and state level, and we did not receive any comments. So we met the requirements related to that. So our belief is that we did meet that, and we didn't hear from the state otherwise.
So, and correct me if I'm wrong, but previously when we've adopted critical areas ordinance and other ordinances dealing with environmental issues, all those have gone to the state separately for, just as you did with this notification indicating that we meet the state requirements. Is that correct?
Correct, yeah. So in this case, there's the standard Department of Commerce where we did a 60-day notice of a proposed amendment to our code, to our municipal code. It's not exactly the land use code, but it's kind of related. And so we sent that to the state. And then, so there's an opportunity for them to review that. The Department of Commerce then kind of routes that to all the different agencies, Fish and Wildlife, Ecology, so that all the different departments at the state level can provide for comments. And so that was done. And then above and beyond that, the WAC requires us to send it out separately and to send out this analysis of the existing regulations that are in place to address newly exempt development, to make sure that there are adequate regulations in place. And so we've done that, and we've met all of those requirements. It did not hear any comments from any local, regional, or state agencies on that.
Okay. And just one more quick question. Do you know how the state determined the maximum thresholds?
I do not, and I would maybe defer to Russ if he has any, if he was involved with any of those discussions. I wasn't involved with those.
Not specifically. It was maybe, I want to say five years ago, during one of the legislative sessions, the legislature did start modifying the SEPA regulations, but I don't know the background to the thresholds that are now codified.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Do you have any other questions for David? Okay, seeing none, let's move ahead and go for, we'll open up the floor for public comments on just this subject, the subject of Ordinance 1118, adoption of SEPA flexible. And with that, we'll open for public comments, and I'll look in the attendees for a hand raised to speak on this subject. I've got a hand raised from Stephanie Ruiz. Stephanie, let's allow her in, Kelly, and we lose her?
No, I'm here. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, Stephanie, go ahead.
Yeah, so I know that there was a question about like minimum requirements met from the state, but I think what I'm asking about is more generally things that are above and beyond that possibly. I'm not that familiar with, as stated earlier, folks didn't really know what went into that minimum requirement. But what about, if we allow for, it sounds like more families on a particular area, do we include additional requirements for sidewalks and funding for schooling? How does all that work?
Okay, well, Stephanie, we won't answer questions, but we can, we'll take those comments for now.
Okay, well, one more comment then.
Okay.
I think if we're making decisions like this, we should at the very least be able to have our experts weigh in on what the minimum requirements are from the state and be able to provide that information when they're proposing something. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Stephanie. Do we have anybody else who would like to provide public comment on this subject tonight? Looking for a hand raised. I've got Carrie. Let's bring Carrie in. Carrie, you have the floor.
Yeah, hi. I just was wondering if there's somewhere on the city website or within city documents where there's maybe a less jargon-filled explanation on what you guys were just talking about, so that people who are not subject matter experts can kind of get a feel for what's going on. I think it's very hard to stay up to date on all of this kind of information. And I think having somebody available to kind of write it in such a way so that the average citizen could understand it would be important, because I was having a very hard time following.
All right, Carrie, thank you very much. And I've got Tori Horseman with her hand raised. Tori, go ahead. You have the floor.
Unmute. Okay, I got it. I'm here. Okay, yes, actually, I do know a lot about this, but having not attended the recent planning meetings, I was not aware that this was going on. I do commend the Planning Commission for not going to the max on shifting SEPA regulations. But as someone who's concerned about affordable housing, I feel like this is something that I would like to know more about before it becomes codified. Anyway, I really I like the direction that this is going, but I too, even as someone who knows a lot about SEPA and NEPA, would really like to know a little bit more about it.
All right, thank you, Tori.
Thank you.
Do we have any other comments for tonight? Raise your hand, please. One more call for raised hands. Not seeing any, we'll go ahead and close the public comments portion of the hearing. And we'll move to further comment by David or other staff.
Yeah, so I didn't have a whole lot to add. I'd be happy to kind of address, you know, planners are sometimes definitely guilty of using a little bit too much jargon and not realizing that we need to convey the message in clear terms to the public. So basically the intent of the flexible thresholds is to acknowledge that basically SEPA categorical exemptions make it so that certain levels of development are not required to go through the state environmental review process. I should have included that in the presentation. So you normally, if you're above the standard thresholds for development, are required to fill out a SEPA checklist. The city is required to issue what's called a threshold determination to basically determine whether there are any potential adverse environmental impacts. And if there are there adequate mitigation measures in place or that need to be proposed to mitigate for those potential impacts? What the flexible thresholds do is it raises those thresholds above the standard thresholds. And basically you're acknowledging that in things such as your stormwater code, your critical areas regulations, your traffic impact fees, your traffic review, that you have other regulations in place that make the SEPA process unnecessary, that you can adequately mitigate any potential impacts related to this newly exempt development. So that's what cities are required to prove. They're also required to provide an analysis of the opportunities for public comment that would be lost by raising the thresholds, because SEPA does allow an avenue for public comment. We did provide that to the state as well and shared that with the Planning Commission, that most of these levels of development need to go through some sort of land use review where there is generally a public comment period that is available. And so that is an important component as well of the analysis that we did for the state. So I apologize for making it maybe a little bit more complicated and not providing enough kind of just general information and background on that. But if there are any additional questions from council members where I could clarify that, I'd be happy to do so.
David, I had a quick question. I heard you say something about master builders. I didn't catch it. Did they weigh in on this?
Yeah, so they provided a letter to the Planning Commission, then also sent a separate email to the City Council, I believe last Thursday, where they are in support of the city adopting flexible thresholds, but they're requesting on the residential side of things that the city raise the thresholds to the maximum allowed by state law, and that would be 30 detached single-family residences and 60 multifamily residences. We're proposing half of that for both single-family and multifamily. So we're proposing 15 and 30, and they're requesting that we raise that to the maximum of 30 and 60.
They still have to, it still has got to meet the requirements, correct?
Requirements of?
Is SEPA, it's still got to meet, doesn't it still have to meet the thresholds?
Well, so, I mean, so the thresholds are basically what establishes a project as exempt or not. So if under ours, if somebody came in with, under what staff is proposing and what the Planning Commission recommended, a 15-unit subdivision or a 30-unit apartment would be exempt. What the master builder's comment letter requested is that we raise those thresholds to allow for a 30-unit subdivision and a 60-unit multifamily development to be exempt from SEPA and not require the preparation of a SEPA checklist.
David, for the purpose of discussion, what would a SEPA checklist disclose other than what's on, other than what is identified through compliance with our other critical area ordinances and the like?
Yeah, so a SEPA checklist, it addresses a lot of their basically identified elements of the environment that the SEPA checklist is required to address. I could bring up a list of it, but it generally covers areas such as land use, housing, kind of critical areas, geology, a number of different topics. And so what you're required to show when you're proposing to raise your thresholds to the flexible thresholds is that you have adopted ordinances or state or federal regulations in place that are applicable to the city that already address all of the topics covered within the SEPA checklist. And so that was the documentation that we were required to provide. So in things such as our critical areas ordinance, our zoning code, our stormwater code, our traffic review process, our traffic impact fees, basically we need to demonstrate that we can address all of the topics that are covered in that SEPA checklist and that they essentially are a redundant process for projects at that level and scope. And so that's what we were able to demonstrate in our analysis.
Do we have some kind of an idea of what a SEPA checklist costs a developer?
Yeah, so our SEPA review fee is $750, I believe, under the most current fee resolution for the SEPA determination. So that there's also just the time involved and the uncertainty related to the potential, for public comment and appeals. And so that is, something that developers need to account for as well. That isn't obviously what influenced us as far as proposing the thresholds. The flexible thresholds are basically, we were looking for an opportunity to streamline the development process, but to make sure that we can demonstrate that, it's justified by having adequate environmental regulations in place.
As far as residential, we see the cost of homes. So when you start talking about affordability and time and expenses for paying someone to do the SEPA review and all that, it adds money to a house. I wish we could I'd like for us to be able to maybe move off that 15 number and maybe not go to the max, but maybe we bump it up a bit. So that way it gives a little more flexibility for builders. But I don't know, I see the prices of homes going up and how hard it is to develop now. They're still meeting all the standards. Hopefully maybe we could move off that number a little bit.
I guess that would be the question, Marcus, as to if we're in compliance with all the state's regulations, why wouldn't we move it to what the state maximum threshold is?
That's what but
why? I just, for the sake of argument, pick a number, 20, 22, 23, if the state's maximum is 30, they must have some justification for why they pick that number. We don't know what it is, but I would say, I mean, we default to the state for numerous regulations, and I guess for ease of compliance, we are, correct me if I'm wrong, David, but we have City of Everett, Marysville, and what, 2 or 3 other jurisdictions have adopted the maximum thresholds?
Yeah, so Everett, Marysville, and then both the city and county of Snohomish. So the city of Snohomish and Snohomish County have both also adopted the maximum thresholds. And so kind of we had done some preliminary analysis during the February 16th work session with the council. That's where we kind of came up with that, brought that back to the Planning Commission. They seemed comfortable with that in their final work session before it moved towards their April 21st. And so, yeah, I mean, the council definitely has the discretion to propose raising those and to amend Ordinance 1118 as, you know, as they so choose.
Yeah, appreciate the Planning Commission has spent a lot of time on this, and I've certainly listened to all their comments in regards to that. But I guess I would keep in mind they were comfortable with 9 units at one point, and the more we kind of talked through the issues, or staff talked through the issues, the comfort level increased. And so I guess by asking some of these questions, I'm trying to get the council comfortable with moving forward with the maximum thresholds, because it again, the state has kind of set that as a maximum, and I guess I would like for us to consider that.
I would be in agreement, especially if all the cities around us are using the maximum threshold as well.
Mary, go ahead.
Thank you. So this is a school teacher talking, not a developer. But here's my question. Which of those thresholds would most serve folks like myself who are middle-class people? Would it make more housing affordable for them, or would it, is it only good for the developers? You know, I just can't quite see. I don't know enough about that area. Sorry, Russ, I know you tried to teach me.
I'll go ahead and take this question. So really our goal would be to streamline development. So anytime there's not a carrying cost for the developer, that's less time spent in an application review process, theoretically, then the price point of that home could go down. So I can't guarantee and wouldn't guarantee that in this real estate market, you will see affordable housing, but it does lend itself to more efficiency and potential lessening of some soft cost for the developer, which then hopefully are received by the end user.
Thank you.
And some of those soft costs that we don't normally think about, you know, we're thinking about just the SEPA thing, but there's other soft costs that and holding costs that they do. There's financial costs for having to wait to get permits submitted. So they've already bought the property. Now they have a financial burden while they're waiting for a bureaucracy to give them the green light that they're going to get anyway. And so there's a heck of a lot more cost involved in this than just what we're discussing as a SEPA review, you know, the $750 for the city. And but all that holding costs that a developer has to have is quite a bit. Affordable housing, you know, the definition of affordable housing is not paying no more than 30% of your income for housing. That's the definition of affordable housing. So will that help that? Hopefully, but yeah, I don't think we could actually make that determination, especially the way it is right now. The housing market and everything else that's going on, there's very little land left. So it's kind of hard.
John, go ahead.
Did you say Sean?
Yeah, you have your hand up.
I guess I think my question has mostly been answered, but you know, aside from the efficiencies, and I certainly understand the soft costs associated with application processes and lag time, but I guess the the bottom line question, I think the core question that we're kind of looking to be answered here is, what's the benefit to the average citizen in Lake Stevens? And I think if we can answer that clearly, I think a lot of the other concerns and hesitations here kind of go away.
So I will go ahead and tackle that one. And I would say the ultimate benefit is streamlining the process is one. Obviously, the city is able to evaluate these projects under another set of regulations, so there's not redundant action by staff. And there is still, in most of our permit types, there is still an avenue for public process. The con side of this that we haven't talked about is under SEPA, there is something called Substantive Authority. And that means that if you don't have a regulation that affects some part of the environment, or if it's not covered under stormwater, not covered under the subdivision statutes, you as the SEPA official or city can apply some other sets of conditions on a projects. That comes up pretty rarely. I can only think of probably a couple of examples, where I've had to do that. Again, that's far and in between, but I think the benefit to the community is just streamlining a process, lack of redundant process, and still providing environmental certainty in decision-making.
I guess the antithesis of that, Sean, and the rest of everybody is, what would be the harm to the typical citizen of Lake Stevens if we pass this?
I have a question that I think the answer might help me better understand that. And I'm just curious if this is a true statement, that by using the maximum thresholds, that would lessen the cost to the developer and reduce redundancies, but not necessarily reduce the cost of the housing to the consumer. Is that correct?
That was my statement, just because we can't control this volatile real estate market. But yeah, in theory, that is one of the justifications that Department of Commerce and others have pushed this forward as an affordable housing platform. There is the possibility, by reducing carrying cost redundancy, that you are providing a cost savings. And if
So it feels a little bit, and pardon my use of jargon, it feels a little bit like the notion of trickle down economics, right? That if you give a break to the people building the houses, that hopefully that break trickles down to the consumer. But that's definitely not a guarantee under the mechanism you're describing.
I think that's a fair statement.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, good discussion on that. I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing and look for a council action at this point.
I'll make a motion that we adopt ordinance number 1118, adopting SEPA flexible thresholds for minor new construction, with the two changes being adopting the maximum thresholds as dictated by the state for single family of 30 units and multifamily of 60 units, with agricultural, commercial, parking, and grading as recommended by the Planning Commission.
I'll second it.
Okay, so I have a motion and a second. And do we have any discussion on the motion?
Question, just for clarification on my part. Is it my understanding that the Planning Commission recommended 15 and 30? And am I understanding that that's Gary's motion? Because I kind of understood what he said is adopting the maximums, which would be 30 and 60.
I understood Gary is going 30 and 60 instead of 15 and 30. Is that correct, Gary?
That's correct. with the regarding the 4 categories below that of agricultural, commercial, parking, and grading, staying with the Planning Commission's recommendations from April 21st.
Okay, just making sure I understood what the motion was.
Gary, as the planning commission, I'm sorry, Councilman Peter Sagan, as the council representative on the planning commission, are you able to summarize just in maybe a sentence or two why you think the planning commission isn't recommending the maximum threshold?
Well, I guess stepping back in time, the original recommendation they came up with was 9 on the single family way back in, what was it, December, I guess, or January.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And I don't actually recall the multifamily, what the number was, but it was a relationship, I believe, Russ, you can correct me if I'm wrong, to the short plat threshold or maximum number. And so they were trying to link some numbers together, I think. I think that as the discussion went forward and as the council was involved, we were looking for a little better linkage as to how to arrive at some numbers rather than, just kind of pulling them out of the air, so to speak, and saying we're comfortable with those. I would say that much the same as the discussion here tonight with folks that don't deal with land development per se, it's kind of, a little foreign language, I guess you might say. And I would say that kind of applies a little bit to the Planning Commission in the sense that they're trying to find a comfort level without jumping too far outside the box, so to speak. So Dave and Russ, you can certainly chime in, but that's kind of my feeling as to where the Planning Commission was coming from.
I think that's a good summary, and I might add one other comment that I think there was a feeling that there might be a loss of public participation. And I know that had been discussed at great length in some of the earlier meetings.
A loss of public participation where?
If there wasn't a threshold determination, that's just another avenue for public comment, but typically that SEPA determination is concurrent with a notice of application or another action. So again, it gets back to this redundancy of notice. So there isn't necessarily a loss of notice because just like we have environmental codes in place, we also have process codes in place.
So just to clarify that sorry.
So Russ, the community will have a chance to be heard in this, right?
Yeah, certainly.
It's not changing the process for people to not be heard. We've set in place that they can still be heard and there'll be transparency, correct?
Through different avenues, yes.
Yes.
It's more in the platting process, commercial development. There's more of a standard process, and multifamily development, really the avenue for public engagement becomes really through a site plan and design review process, which is different than what you would see in a subdivision.
For me, I just want to make sure this doesn't trump the transparency part and the availability for people to come and give their input and make sure that everyone's being heard.
Yeah, there's still abilities to be heard on projects.
Yeah, just to clarify, anything over a 9-unit subdivision is a type 3 land use application that goes to the hearing examiner. Anything below that is a short plat. And then, the difference between a 30-unit and a 60-unit multifamily residential development as far as the review process, there really isn't one. They would be subject to that site plan review and design review, which are land use applications, which would have their as applicable, their notice of application.
For me, I think this is important to be consistent with the communities around us as well. If they're all at the 30-60, I think it's important for us to be putting those same things in place so it's not hard to be development here in Lake Stevens.
And Gary, I
Yes.
just want to thank you. I've also participated in the meetings and the discussions with the Planning Commission as a liaison, and I would say you did a very good job of accurately portraying the discussions, the thoughtful discussions of the Planning Commission.
Thank you.
All right, so I have a motion on the floor, and we'll call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
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 And any opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, for the record, Councilmember Dickinson and Councilmember Jorstad were the was opposing of the motion. Okay, so with that, that passes, and we will move on to the next item, which is an action item G, revised ordinance 1112 for Southeast local annexation. David, you're up again.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So this is a really short one. So if you'll remember, back on March 23rd, the City Council adopted Ordinance 1112, which was to authorize the mayor to sign the interlocal agreement for the proposed Southeast interlocal annexation. That followed a joint public hearing on March 9th with the Snohomish County Council and the Lake Stevens Sewer District Board of Commissioners. As part of Ordinance 1112, there was an identified effective date of the annexation, which was May 28th, 2021. That was to account for the proposed 45-day required review by the Snohomish County Boundary Review Board. Because the County Council took a little bit longer to review and ultimately authorize the county executive to sign the ILA, we are not going to be able to meet that effective date of annexation. And so we are here tonight to request that the City Council amend Ordinance 1112 to update the effective date to July 16th, 2021. That is reflected in the interlocal agreement and also included within the language of the revised ordinance. And so I'm happy to answer any questions.
I don't have any questions for you, David. I just want to thank you for the tremendous work that you have put in working on this and through kind of the challenges that we faced in getting to this point. So thank you for your efforts.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
I would like to move that we move forward with the amending of the date.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? Mary, go ahead.
Yeah, I just still have to say, I still regret that folks didn't get to choose this themselves. They didn't get to vote on it. But I get it. We're following the process. It's totally across the board appropriate to do, but still, I still have a problem with that.
All right, Mary, thank you. I'll go ahead and call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none opposed, motion passes. And we will move to the discussion item added by Councilmember Dickinson on the DEIA Commission. Go ahead, Councilmember Dickinson.
Yes, first of all, I think the fact that we have people that are passionate about this, who are willing to do the work, means that we're going to have a chance to have a commission and actually have it function here in our city. And I am from a community in North Carolina that was very diverse, and there were huge potentials that I can see happening here in Lake Stevens if we have an open door to everyone. And I just can't say I couldn't be more excited about this. And I just think that we will have no trouble finding folks to be in this commission. I know there are people that are very interested who will be able to give it good input. That's all I have to say.
I guess I'll just add my 2 cents. Mary, thank you for your comments. I appreciate that. I guess I'm looking at it from a little different lens. So I'm thinking of tomorrow, there's a person of color who's not represented by any of the BIPOC, current BIPOC makeup. that also is a senior citizen and also is probably going to be subject to potentially to a code enforcement matter. Being aware of that helped to arrange for to take care of the issue at hand. So I'm thinking, I think it's great that we have people. When I think of equity and inclusion, I think of people with disabilities. I have a brother with Down syndrome, and my niece is African American. And I think of those people being involved. I think of our seniors, and I think of the work that Jerry Stumbaugh is doing. At one point we talked about the service organizations, people helping out to help those in code enforcement situations, so that we don't have to take legal action against them. And I think those people are kind of the underrepresented that may have, as Angie pointed out, may have some mental health or some emotional challenges that may impair their ability to address that. And I just think how awesome it'd be if we could take that on. And so I think that would be I'd love to see, whether it's an advisory committee or a commission, or whatever the makeup is, to represent more than just skin color. I'd love to see men and women participate in that. I'd love to see people with limited and varied abilities. And I'd love to see people of varying ages. And I might even throw, the youth folks in there. I've noticed that several of the service projects in our community, I helped out with the youth project, staining, our city center, the mill, and also with the sandbagging event. There's a lot of youth that participated in that. So I'd love to see a focus, whatever we come up with, be focused on service to our neighbors, and less advocacy and more action by serving our neighbor. And so I think that's those are my 2 cents on that. I'd love to see it be a more really inclusive group of people, not just upper middle class people that are part of that.
I guess my only comment is I walked away from last week's workshop meeting believing that the majority of the council were in favor of a commission. And so I just would like to, I think that's true, and would like to know that that is the plan moving forward. Or if not, I guess I'd like to know what the plan is.
I think where we left it was the mayor, it was his decision to decide what direction he wants to go, and there'll be an ordinance. I don't want to speak for him or anyone else, but that was my impression. And so I'm waiting to see what comes forward in that regard. So I hope it's something that's inclusive and equitable and balanced that represents our community.
Yeah, and from my standpoint, that's what I understood as well from last week. And I still have my ears open on. I'm still getting pinged by some folks on this subject, and I'm still listening on it. And I'll bring something to the council soon. Any other input on this?
One thing I would like to say is I think that the process we've been through in the last several months on this has been important to the community. It's been important to the council. I've learned a lot. I've listened a lot. I've talked a lot. I also know that to bring a new commission into being takes some time from a staff standpoint. They need some time to put this together, get a resolution together, and get that together. The mayor and the staff have to do that. They are very busy all the time. It's not just busy right now. And I'm not using that as an excuse of why this hasn't come forward sooner, but it is going to take some time to get it on the books. So, be patient, and let's have the staff and the mayor do what they're supposed to be doing and see what they bring. I'm looking forward to seeing it also.
I did have a conversation with the BIPOC group, and I think they have a lot of momentum wanting to put a commission in place is what I think they would like. Last time we had the meeting, I thought that Brett was going to check in with them and have a conversation to bring something back. But I do know it's a council decision. If we want a commission or not, I definitely don't want to disrespect what the mayor was trying to do as well. But I know in speaking with the group, they have a lot of momentum and really want us to take a next step in the community in having this group come and be able to give advice. And, I think a lot of them are just volunteering and, I think they want to be able to just give us some input and look back. Once again, I thought that they were going to have a conversation with Brett and kind of work through what Brett might feel like is best for the community. Ultimately, it's our decision. But I know that there's a lot of momentum around them trying to put a group together. And I think part of it is it's hard to be successful having a commission and having people show up. I mean, Veterans Commission, a lot of times we struggle having a group. So it takes time and effort. So it does make it really hard. But at the same time, I feel like there's a lot of momentum behind it. So I hope Brett can have opportunity conversation with them and maybe look at whether it's commission or advisory board, and then we can, figure out what's best for the community as a council.
And Marcus, just saying, I've met with him several times.
Okay, great.
I just wanted to say that I really appreciated Steve's mention of Councilmember Ewing's mention of people with special needs and men. Yes, there seem to be a lot of women speaking tonight, but no, absolutely, there's huge potential here. And I love the idea of young people also. I can't imagine that it couldn't work and it couldn't help us. And what I really like is the idea that we're stepping out there and doing this and showing that Lake Stevens is a welcoming place, which is, I know, what we all believe.
Okay, do we have any other comments on this subject? Okay, so with that, we will move to an executive session. And it is going to be the subject is a collective bargaining issue, personnel matter, and there'll be no action to follow. So council members, if you could jump out of this system and over to your team's meeting, we'll meet there. And we should only be, let's go 15 minutes.
So we're going to mute and turn off our camera on the Zoom, right?
Yeah, and it's a Teams meeting, not a Zoom meeting.
I sent the link out earlier.
Hey Kelly, can you, we've got some noise here on this side somewhere. So if everyone could mute on this side.
Okay. Gary, are you finding the link? You're muted.
Just flip it over.
Doing okay, Kelly?
Huh?
Okay.
I'm getting a message that I can't start my video, so.
All right, we got you, Marcus. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Sounds to me like we need to get some of that broadband money into our community.
Yeah. All right, we have all 7 council members back. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
And any opposed? Thanks for your work, everybody. Get out there and do good stuff in the community. And if you need any help, give me a ring.
All right. Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Night, guys.